Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Aljamain Sterling versus Youssef Zalal fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content, and you can also use the Patreon for betting tips and advice as well. And I will try my best to get out there for you guys. I appreciate all the support and which I've had with it so far, and of course the link will be in the description. Let's get straight into this one. And I mean, combat sporting wise, it is a bit of a quiet week, and so that's why I wanted to speak about this fight. I think it's an interesting fight, and I think stylistically it's a good matchup, which, like I say, could gel to not be the most entertaining of fights, but I think could be a very technical affair of martial arts. And I think this is a good fight to make, but definitely one that if Aljamain Sterling wins, he should be rewarded with higher up the rankings opponent, and also it also I believe shows that for a definite reason that Jean Silva should not be given a title shot over Aljamain Sterling. I mean, Silva's ranked 6th, Sterling's ranked 5th, and you're giving Sterling ranked 7th Zalal, and you're giving Silva ranked 6th Volkanovski possibly. That's what I'm hearing as a rumour, but like I said, I just don't feel like it should happen. It's not fair, and yeah, that's just something in which I wanted to say. But like I say, for Sterling, if he wins this one, I mean, he's taking a risk taking this fight, and really, I mean, Sterling was calling for a title shot after his last fight. Again, I probably wouldn't have given him that, but coming off of his win against Ortega, again, he could have been moved on to a fight a little bit higher up the rankings instead. Again, we're seeing the likes of Lopez give Steve Garcia an opportunity, but like I say, Sterling isn't getting that same kind of opportunity. Instead, he's having to work for it against Youssef Zalal. And, Sterling has a big name. Of course, he is a former champion, so he maybe should be given a little bit more, I feel. For Zalal, though, this fight is a great opportunity and a great chance to get a real good name on his resume as a former champion. Of course, if he does go out there and win, it's definitely going to be the biggest win of his career so far if he does win. Since coming up into the featherweight division, Sterling, it's clear that there is still ability there, but is it enough to get him to the belt again? Again, I'm not too sure. I mean, he's coming off a good win against Ortega, who is a good name, who obviously has been around the rankings for a while. He does seem to be trickling out a little bit now, but again, he is still a good name. It's just, like I said, I don't know how well Sterling can take strong punches anymore. He was doing well against Ortega and he was having a lot of success, but then in that final round, yeah, I think it was the final round, he got caught with a punch and it did look to seem like it hurt him a bit, and then he dropped his hands and it just wasn't really the best of looks. So obviously Sterling got stopped by O'Malley before he moved up into the featherweight division. So again, I just don't know how good he is, like I say, with his chin at this point in his career. Obviously, he did also have a loss to Evloev, which has aged well. Of course, Evloev, going out there and getting a win against Murphy and should be next in line for a title shot. And I would say, arguably, Sterling was more competitive in his fight with Evloev than Lerone Murphy was with his fight with Evloev. And there could be a narrative there to make Sterling versus Murphy, of course, both of them losing to Evloev. So again, Sterling in that fight with Evloev, it was a very high skilled, for the most part, a wrestling fight. There was a decent amount of striking here and there where I think it went back and forth, but again, the wrestling and the scrambles were very much back and forth as well, and it was, like I say, very high level, and it was a competitive fight for sure. Again, I feel like Evloev just kept him in positions where he wanted him that little bit more, but still, like I say, it was a competitive fight nonetheless. And I also don't feel like when Sterling was a champion, he really got given that much respect. Obviously, he fought Cejudo, which obviously hasn't aged well with Cejudo just going and losing loads since, and Dillashaw, who was obviously on the way out of his career at that point. But the win against Pure Dion, obviously the first one was controversial with it going to a no contest, but the second one, that was a split decision win. It was a close win, but he still won it, and that obviously has aged well with Jan going and becoming a champion again. So again, there's definitely good wins on Sterling's resume, and even just good competitive fights that's been on his resume. And so, like I say, I feel like he does deserve a bit more respect, and I think it's interesting when former champions lose and then move up in weight. We saw it with Davison Figueiredo as well. Sometimes they get given that opportunity to move up quicker and better, and they get moved into the big fights, like I say, faster, but then sometimes they don't. And like I say, Devson Figueiredo's had to work and never really been able to reach their title kind of stature again. And Sterling, he's having to work, and again, he might never reach that title stature again. And so, like I say, the fact that Sterling was former champion for, what, 3, 4 fights when he was reigning, again, it's just interesting to see. Like I say, he's now having to fight the likes of a Youssef Zalal instead of, like I say, being bumped up the rankings that bit quicker. Zalal, he has been in the UFC for actually 6 years now, and he's only really started to make a name for himself at this point. But like I say, he's been in the UFC for quite a while now, and he actually had an early loss in his career. I think he was up at lightweight. It might have been actually at featherweight, thinking about it, but it was against Ilia Topuria, which actually went to a decision. So like I say, that's a big name to have on his resume, even though, like I say, it was a good few years ago now. And I mean, he's undefeated in his last 8 fights, which is very impressive. Not many fighters in the UFC can say that. And he beat Calvin Kattar the same way that Sterling did, via a unanimous decision. And then made pretty easy work of Josh Emmett, submitting him in round 1. And that was an impressive win. Obviously, Emmett was coming off his loss to, I think it was Murphy at that point, but that was a unanimous decision. And then, nobody really had stopped Emmett all that often. I mean, he did get stopped by Yair Rodriguez, but not in the first round. Zalal went out there and stopped Emmett in the first round. Obviously, since then, Emmett had lost to Kevin Vallejos in the first round. But like I say, that was an impressive win at the time. And I still feel like it is an impressive win, submitting him in round 1. Against Emmett, but like I say, he still hasn't fought the same level of opponents as Sterling. I mean, again, you go through Sterling's resume, it's got, just as him as a champion, Petr Yan, Henry Cejudo, TJ Dillashaw, in their prime, they're all really big names. Even, O'Malley, again, he didn't have the best of runs as a champion, but he is still a champion, even though he did lose Sterling to him. But like I say, he's got some good names in his resume. Like I say, adding Evloev to that as well, even though he didn't win. Sterling has fought at a lot higher level than that of Zalal, obviously that's clear. But Zalal is 29, so he does have a lot of years, you would imagine, left still in martial arts. So even if he does lose this fight, he can rebuild well. But again, he might also have that youthfulness, which it does look like in his style he does. Whereas Sterling is 36 now. He, like I say, does seem to be getting caught with a few more shots and getting hurt a little bit more regularly than I'm sure he wants to. Again, neither of these fighters are really the most powerful of punchers. I think they are stylistically, like I say, quite similar fighters. But again, I don't know if Zalal is going to be able to hurt Sterling. To start speaking about both fighters individually skill-wise though, Sterling as a fighter, he will suffocate you with his wrestling. He'll stick on your back and often not really let go, and he is difficult to get off. He will just get to your back quickly as well, and again, he'll do that at pretty much any opportunity available, and he will show that you're not, at a wrestling standard with him if you're not. And so again, it will be interesting to see if he can test Zalal. And obviously Zalal has being a wrestler, I think he was a college wrestler in America, so I'm sure he's had plenty of fighters trying to wrestle with him and get on his back. But again, will it be the same kind of level as what Sterling will be when he is possibly trying to suffocate you? And he will drag you down to the canvas as well when he is going for takedowns. I also think he is stronger in, like I said, going for takedowns and going for these things. I think as a whole, he is just that bit stronger. But again, we'll have to wait and see if he's going to be able to, like I say, take down Zalal, and if he really will want to. I mean, in the Ortega fight, he actually wasn't going for a takedown all that often. In the Evloev fight, there was a lot more wrestling than in the Ortega fight. Ortega fight, he was actually just picking shots and having more success through popping in and out with punches, which was nice when he was doing that with the superior speed on Ortega. But again, I wouldn't recommend doing that consistently against Zalal, because Zalal will do the same thing, but he'll do it faster, I think. So I think if he can get down Zalal to the ground, it will be interesting to see how he fares. He's got, like I say, strong straight shots. I mean, neither of these guys are the most powerful punchers, and Sterling, like I say, I think is stronger as a whole, and his jab does look stronger than that of Zalal's. So again, he has that, which is nice, and I think he is more willing to use hooks than that of Zalal, even though his hook technique isn't the best. Negatives about him, he can be timed coming in. Obviously, we saw that with the O'Malley fight, where he got timed. He also did kind of get timed in the Ortega fight as well, but just not quite badly enough to knock him out. He leans in with his head when he's throwing, which often, like I say, can lean onto him getting timed. He's got a minimal output when striking. He doesn't mix in combinations all that much, neither does Zalal in that way, to be fair. I think he uses less kicks and doesn't really go to the body all that often either. He's not using the most, like say, amount of power in his punches either. I think his hooks are kind of arm slappy hooks. There was a weird thing in the Ortega fight where he kind of caught him with a hook, but Ortega managed to play it off as an eye poke, which it wasn't, but the way that he landed the hook was kind of like his thumb just catching him on the ear. It wasn't really the best, like say, thrown hook, and I've seen that with Sterling a couple of times when he's striking, and I feel like he does also struggle to slow you down with his strikes as well, like say dealing with pressure fighters. Again, I think Zalal's the same, but I feel like Zalal possibly invites that pressure a little bit more. Zalal, as a fighter, he's faster, in my opinion, than that of Sterling, especially at this point in his career. He's light on his feet and he's able to get himself out of danger pretty well with his movement. Again, his head movement isn't all that much, but when he is in a real dangerous spot, he will duck and try and get out of it, and that's, nice. It'll be interesting to see how Sterling will, if it was Sterling, will be able to put on the pressure. Again, striking, because they are kind of both similar with the way that they pick their shots and try and bounce in and out with singular shots, it could, like say, lean on it to be a boring fight, and I feel like both of them will possibly struggle to catch the other one to go for a takedown. So again, it could be a boring fight on the feet, and that wouldn't surprise me this fight. Zalal, did time a real nice double leg on Emmett, and like I say, that was really well timed, and he, I think, has improved with his wrestling throughout his career. And I also like how he uses his opponent's momentum against them to take them down, and again, he did that very nicely against Emmett. I don't think Zalal's all that strong physically, but like I say, if he can use your momentum against you, then he can have success, like I say, to take you down. But again, I just don't feel like Sterling's going to be the guy to put on that same kind of pressure and get timed with a takedown like Zalal did against Emmett. So again, it could be, like say, a technical kind of chess match, this fight, where they're both trying to feint each other out to commit. He'll go and find different submissions. Zalal, I mean, I don't think Sterling's overly much of a submission threat. He'll go on your back and he will be there to try and go for submissions, but he's not going to go for versatile, different types of submissions. He will just, like say, be on your back. And if you can defend the rear naked choke, if he even goes for it, then you can kind of, it's annoying having him on there, but he's not going to be going for loads of different submissions. Whereas Zalal, I don't know if he will be, but he did get a unique type of submission against Emmett, which, like I say, did look like he was going for something a bit different. And it was a surprising one that worked, which doesn't normally work, but like I say, it did work. His kicking variation is good, Zalal. He uses his range on his jab nicely, and he can, pick away at punches. And to be fair, he possibly uses his range a bit more than that of Sterling with his jab, even though I think Sterling's jab's a little bit stronger. Negatives about Zalal: his hands are very low with an open guard. He basically has no defensive guard. He's not the most powerful either. He does invite pressure, like I say, a lot more, just like I say, being more willing to just go on the back foot. His head's on the line quite a lot, like I say, unless he's in a really bad spot trying to get out, then his head is quite often on the line. He's not as strong, in my opinion, as that of Sterling. I think he does want a slower striking pace than that of... Just Sterling does want a slower striking pace, but I think he is more willing to turn it up, like I say, throwing the hooks in as well. He, like I said, I don't feel like we'll be able to stop any kind of pressure with his strikes, but again, that's the same as Sterling, and I just don't feel like there's going to be much pressure with this one. I don't think he fights in close that well. Zalal, I think Sterling's a little bit better in that way, and I think working in a clinch isn't the best thing for Zalal. When Zalal fought Qatar, he was trying to get in clinches and trying to take him down, and like I say, it just wasn't working, and it wasn't as nice. And like I say, anytime it went to a clinch, Qatar just kind of shrugged it off. And again, that's something in which I feel like Sterling, being that bit stronger, he'll be able to have more success if he tries to do that. Who do I think is going to win this fight? I think that Aljamain Sterling is going to be able to win via a unanimous decision. Like I said, I don't anticipate this to be the most exciting of fights. I don't think there is going to be a stoppage, but I think Sterling's experience will help him a lot. I think Zalal might be a tricky person to take down, but I feel like at some point he's going to have to do something offensive to try and disrupt Sterling, and I think Sterling will hopefully not just try and strike with him and actually, like I say, take him to the ground and try and get his back. And like I say, Zalal could get a different kind of submission, which again could catch Aljamain out, but I think, like I said, the strength of him Sterling will be able to, like I say, suffocate Zalal and just give him something in which, at a high level, he hasn't had to deal with all too much recently, especially with the opponents in which he's been against with strikers like Emmett and Zalal, and Qatar recently. So again, I think Sterling is going to win a unanimous decision. And then we can go on to fight next. I mean, like I say, I feel like he should get bumped up the rankings. Well, he won't get bumped up the rankings. He probably won't even move in the rankings. But I feel like he should get given an opportunity higher up in the rankings. I don't think he should get a title shot because Volky's fighting Evloev, hopefully, for a title. If not, Volky's fighting Silva, and it's a stupid one. And we don't really want to see Sterling versus Evloev again, even though it was a competitive fight the first time. But again, Evloev probably will just wait for his title shot whenever that will be. So Sterling could fight the winner of Lopez versus Garcia. Of course, that is on the UFC White House card, so that could be a good fight to fight the winner of, and like I said, try and climb himself up the rankings. Lerone Murphy could be a good fight to fight the winner of as well. That would be an interesting fight, which could... I don't know how that would play out, actually. Like I said, I feel like that would be a competitive fight. Like I say, both guys losing to Evloev, or could be Jean Silva for Sterling again. I mean, it's a big name in Silva because he's built himself and, made a bit of hype about him. But like I say, I feel like Sterling, if he wins this one, should be given a bit of a better fight for a guy a bit higher up the rankings. Not to say John Silva's a bad fighter, he's not at all. But like I say, just somebody a bit higher up the rankings. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did indeed like the video, subscribe if you're new. And thanks for watching.